So, you want to sell heroin, not on a street corner. You'd be arrested or dead by Thursday. You want to sell it the clean way, the legal way, to millions of people in nice houses who would call the police if you offered them heroin to their face. Here's the only trick you need. You never sell it yourself. You get someone else to hand it over. Someone the customer trusts more than they trust you, more than they trust their own gut. Someone they were trained since they were a child to obey without question. Their doctor. You don't put the drug in the customer's hand, you put it in the doctor's hand, and you let the doctor pass it across the desk with a smile in a little orange bottle under a name that sounds nothing like heroin. A company called Purdue Pharma ran this exact play. For the most part, it was completely legal, and it killed more than 500,000 Americans. The family that owned it, the Sacklers, got richer than the Rockefellers. But them being greedy is the part everyone already knows. It's also the least interesting and the least dangerous part of this whole story. Normally, if you're selling something that quietly hurts people, you have one big enemy: the experts, the doctors, the scientists, the people in the white coats, whose whole job is to look at your product and tell the public the truth about it. For most of history, if you sold something dangerous, those were the people standing in your way. Purdue had a much smarter idea than fighting them. Don't fight the white coat. Wear it. Don't argue with the doctor. Recruit him. Turn him into your sales rep without him ever once realizing he's on the payroll. Because a patient will ignore an advertisement. A patient will never ignore a prescription. That's the whole move. We're going to walk it in 4 steps. And by the end, you'll understand how a product this dangerous didn't just slip past the people whose job was to stop it, it went out through them. Move 1. Forget the person who swallows the pill. Aim everything at the person who signs for it. OxyContin launched in 1996. Its active ingredient, oxycodone, sits in the same chemical family as morphine and heroin. Same receptors in the brain, same machinery, same risk. Purdue knew exactly what they were holding. So the entire sales machine pointed at a single target: the prescriber. They flooded doctors' offices with sales reps. They paid doctors directly, speaking fees, consulting fees, seats on advisory boards. They flew them to weekend pain management seminars at resorts, conferences that were, in plain terms, all expenses paid vacations. And later they hired McKinsey, the most expensive consultants on the planet, to answer one question: how do we get doctors to write more? We'll call this move borrowing the white coat. Every other industry has to pay a spokesman the public already half distrusts. Purdue got the most trusted person in your life to make the pitch for them for free and meaning every word. And here's the dark genius of it. The doctor wasn't lying. The doctor believed it, which means when he looked you in the eye and told you this was safe, he meant it. And you believed him because of course you did. He's the doctor. The prescription pad is the most powerful sales tool ever invented. Not for what's written on it, but for who hands it to you. Your doctor is supposed to be the wall between you and a drug like this. Purdue turned the wall into a door, but a doctor isn't a child. A doctor wants evidence. So, move 2. When the science isn't on your side, build some. Here is the centerpiece, and I need you to sit with how flimsy it is. To convince an entire profession that addiction was rare, Purdue leaned on a single source. Not a clinical trial, not a long study, a letter. A 110-word letter to the editor of a medical journal written in 1980, 16 years before OxyContin existed, describing hospital patients under supervision given opioids short-term. 5 sentences, observing that those particular patients rarely got hooked. That was the foundation. A 5-sentence note about supervised hospital patients got stretched through sheer repetition into a blanket promise that fewer than 1% of patients on long-term opioids would become addicted. The real number for chronic pain runs as high as 1 in 4. And they didn't stop at the letter. They funded the key opinion leaders, respected pain specialists who would give the lectures and put their names on the articles. They funded patient advocacy groups that looked independent and weren't. They paid for the continuing education courses, the very classes where doctors go to learn what's safe. If you control the science, the experts, and the schooling all at the same time, you don't have to win the argument. You get to be the argument. A weaker company would have sold doubt. You can't really prove it's dangerous. The science isn't settled. Purdue did the opposite, and it was far more powerful. They sold certainty. Manufactured, paid-for, white-coated certainty. Because a doctor won't act on a maybe, but he'll bet your life on a sure thing. And now, move 3. This is the one. If there's a single moment in this entire story where you should feel the floor drop out, it's here. Even with all of that, doctors started to notice something. Patients were coming back early, begging for refills, driving to 3 different clinics to get more, lying to get it. These are the textbook warning signs of addiction. Every doctor on earth knows that. The alarm was going off. So Purdue handed them a brand new way to read the alarm. They promoted a concept called pseudoaddiction. The idea when a patient is desperate for more pills, clock watching, doctor shopping, pleading, that isn't addiction, that's under treatment. The patient isn't hooked, they're simply still in pain. And the solution is more of the drug. Read that again. The exact behavior that should make a doctor slam the brakes was rebranded as the reason to press the accelerator. And here's how thin it was. The term was coined by one doctor based on a single patient. No study ever validated it. And that doctor later took a job as an executive at Purdue. We'll call this the inverted alarm. You take the smoke detector, the thing screaming fire, get out, and you rewire it so that when it goes off, it turns up the gas. The signal of the harm becomes the trigger for more of the harm. There has never been a more efficient way to kill a customer because the one thing that should have saved them is the thing selling them the next dose. Which brings us to move 4, the step that turns this from a tragedy into a system. In 2007, it caught up with them. Purdue pleaded guilty to a federal crime, misbranding, for promoting OxyContin as less addictive than they knew it to be. They paid more than $600 million in penalties. The headlines said justice. The headlines were wrong. Because $600 million set against the billions OxyContin was earning is not a punishment. It's a fees. It's a line item. It's the cost of doing business, and the business kept going. Investigators later found Purdue still pushing that same pseudo-addiction idea to doctors years after the guilty plea. And when the pressure finally forced a real change, when, in 2010, they reformulated the pill to make it harder to crush and snort, the people already dependent didn't quietly recover. They couldn't. They switched to something cheaper, stronger, and already waiting on the corner, heroin. And then, fentanyl. The dependency Purdue manufactured in suburban living rooms became the deadliest street drug wave in the history of the country. The factory didn't just build users for a product, it built users for a substance, and then handed them to the street. And the whole time, the Sacklers had been carving their name in gold letters into the walls of the world's great museums, the Met, the Louvre, the Guggenheim, the same family name on the wing of an art museum and on the bottle in a dead man's medicine cabinet. That isn't a coincidence. That's the final move in the playbook. Launder the name, faster than the bodies can attach to it. So here's where we'll leave you. It is very tempting to file this one under evil rich family caught, the end. That's the comfortable version, but notice what the comfortable version requires. It requires a villain, a Sackler to point at. And that is exactly why it will happen again. Because the machine never actually needed a villain standing at the counter. It needed 3 things: a trusted person who believed the lie, a science that could be bought, and an alarm that could be rewired. None of those require anyone in the room to be evil. They just require a system that pays everyone to look away. And that last piece, the inverted alarm, keep it. Because once you know its shape, you'll start seeing it everywhere. Anytime something tells you that your urge to stop is really a sign you need more, that the way to fix the empty feeling the thing gives you is the thing itself, that the cure for the anxiety of the debt is a little more credit, that putting the phone down is a fear you make go away by picking it back up, you are looking at the exact same wiring, the smoke detector that turns up the gas. Purdue didn't invent addiction. They invented something colder, a way to make the people we trust most hand it to us with a smile, and a way to make the alarm sound like an invitation. They paid their fine. The Sacklers kept their fortune. And the wiring they proved works is still in the walls. So look at the last thing a professional told you that you absolutely needed and ask, who paid for them to be so sure?